I'm soaring, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The President of Ukraine, Vladimir, today in the evening, will tell about the fact that American representatives are in Berlin. We do not know exactly who represents the American delegation at that forum. It is not known, it is absolutely obvious, that the crime of the special representative of the President received in the state in the trial of Mayor Stephen Vythov. I have been talking to the son-in-law of the American President Jared Kushner for a long time. Having visited the Russian capital and met with Putin and other Russian officials from the President of the Russian Federation. It is not known who will work with Kushner at the workshop. The media call the massacre a ghost. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is extremely Sredny, and the Russians have richly so-called Myra plan, which was conceived by Kirill Dmitriev by an American official. The Kush led by him will still come off before successful initiatives. And with such a rank, hardly adoring, as if he was present at the Razra plan, and destined for it with just at the Russian political. Another special fate taken from us back in the German tables. State Secretary with Mark Ruby received in the state, with nigh on his crime continue on Poligata European leaders. It was enough to institutionalize with the American delegation and lead away, and not on a heap. I'm on richly to the President from the received states. Donald Trump will not really see at the expense of Rubio, so otherwise, the argument is to conduct this situation out of the SOAP plan of the Sovereign Department. However, as of tonight, we do not know with you whose brand Ruby Jared Kushner will be ready to look like. We do not know, because of the full warehouse of European leaders who will be present in the rant today. The President of the French Republic Emmanuel Macron, the Prime Minister of Britain Keir Starmer, said even before the prone. There, the Federal Chancellor is not Friedrich Merz, but literally the Finnish President Alexander Stupnik showed up, and led by his good special bags and Donald Trump, so they will arrive to Berlin for the fete. And they are also important in the German ones, they still remember their kind of oysters. The yaks we have already bought with you on Ukraine gave the Americans imperious. We are not talking about positions. I will find out the New York Times with the details of the plan, calling it a counterplan of Ukraine. And the moments of the counterplan for Ukraine, which are decisive on the margins, will obviously not be accepted for the Russian side. Although I am in the hall, respecting for the President of Russia Putin, a greedy plan, tied to the completion of guilt from Ukraine, is not accepted, that Putin with full determination will continue to blame for the eviction of Ukraine. And we all batched on yesterday's Odessa, and you want to say everything else here in Ukraine, who knows that such a one is sitting. And it's light with the water and heat of deep Spivchev. I was literally bored by those cruel Russian blows. Well, the head of the propositions of the Ukrainian counterplan is embedded in the fragmented American delegation, actually dictated by Kirill to Dmitry. Ukraine propane into the fire on the demarcation line. Akchija to a niche was gone, and the American side, and says that they are not elected, are to blame. In Russia, she did not conquer the territory, and we and the Vice President from the United States J. Devens, and the views of the Sovereign Secretary Mark Rubio, tilka for Donald Trump's oysters, and with Putin in Alaska. The Americans pithed to the problem, and the torture is that no one can infect anyone with any rank. On the territorial demarcation of Russia from Ukraine, for the minds of the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the Donetsk region. And the registration is legal. No one, of course. I am a Kim Chin in Zagoli. Ukraine can enter its territories, also from the point of view of the criminality of troops. So when hiring from the point of view of a legal approach to those who read the Constitution of Ukraine, it is necessary to keep in it the PV of those articles that are in the text of our basic law. Let's say one of those strategs is right behind defending the booths of Yaki Bula, with a direct view to the destruction of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And Incha article to talk about the fact that Yak's territorial treason can come true tilki shlyak Zagolno people's referendum. And the Kola is overgrown richly, who reads these two articles and can be perivnevit them. Then it can be revealed in full of such legal casuistry. But I'm just like that, one article. That it is possible to hold a referendum on territorial treason in Ukraine. And Suvorev's article defends knitting from violation of the territorial integrity of our territories. Well, to tell the truth, it requires extremely not its own, but legal expertise. The Constitution doesn't spell it perfectly. Yeah, you all know that perfectly well. And in the articles about the fact that you embroider the torture of the territorial integrity of Ukraine with the shlyak of the referendum, the wazish torture of the territory in Ukraine, you are tilki with the shlyak of the referendum. A greedy president and a greedy parliament cannot cut out the people. Because the whole article is located where, in principle, you describe the holding of officially popular referendums. That is the norms of direct democracy. And the article in Ya is about the fact that there can't be no visits here on the destroyed territorial integrity of Ukraine, and the so-called eternal article in the Constitution. The Yakun article does not, and it says that there can be two main categories of treason in the Constitution: the rights of sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And not yaks and articles cannot be floated into the say absolutely safe fact. There is no constitutional way for a snake and territorial integrity in Ukraine. And guessing about the fact that torture before the territory can look at the referendum. I am simply concerned with the main provision of the Ukrainian constitution. And it was not Hromadyan of Ukraine who was expelled for such territorial treason to allow about the referendum. And you can comment up to equestrian lawyers. I'm so batchu. And one more important point. Tied to the principles of international law, I am supreme, and for the Ukrainian basic laws. The principles of international law that there can be no territorial changes in legislation tied to aggression, occupation, and annexation are frequent on the territory of a power. The Zmina of the territorial uestru and cannot be in front of the aggressor's primus and under his machine gun. And to that, Ukraine, Propanuya American administrations, are turned to the Shlyak healthy gluzda. And for the proposition, for Propanovitaya Russia, the Prip is not on fire on the demarcation line screeching. She, in fact, turned the administration of Donald Trump to international law. Well, you overestimate the torture for 3 times. Not important. On another soon-to-be-published article. And in support of the main provision in the Constitution of Ukraine and international law about the referendum even before Ukraine. In the Crimea of Sevastopol, Donetsk and Lugansk, Kherson, Zapaska regions. Who, having said that the bill of the population of Ukraine will vote for the hook. And who said that for what and the result, we will beat. The hook will be voted by more deputies of the Ukrainian parliament. Tesh serious pitany. Sociological testing does not fix the willingness of Ukrainians to vote like that. Well, and I'll tell you now that in the city of the proposition of Russia with a direct one. Not everyone still has this in mind of Ukraine. You know the fact that Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson are behind the Paris region. And Crimea Sevastopol is the PPR of the subject of the Russian Federation for everything. And in order to get on the Samper up to Vesta on the right to the internal destabilization of Ukraine and paint and mines occupation away from our territory often. And the point in the Ukrainian plan is important. They will unpack with the New York Times the point assigned to guarantees. And one of the most important points, and we are looking at, and about the Russian-Ukrainian guilt and prevention. I will not attack Russia on Ukraine. It will still theoretically go into completing that guilt, as you continue today. Because, in principle, the Russian-Ukrainian fault from the point of view of both Russian and Russian political scientists. Until the 20th, 17th, 18th. It's like a 30-point war is being waged. So that it was not possible to profit from Russia's attack on Ukraine. My Russia is simply not an accepted attack. That's what overgrown the head idea of the Russian political viscose, and right on the discount rocky Russians jump out of the sill. In order to graze to fight. It seems to me that about the fact that the Russians will I become such a thing. Putin's adoration is on the 30th. I think. That's how to think about TOE guarantees. It is obvious that they will not be shoes yet. And even with the receipt of the United States will be blocked from Ukraine de NATO, then our Ukraine is a priest of the very idea of neutrality, and not for defending Ukraine in the Donata Stupa. In principle, the entire article of the American administration can absolutely calmly, for what reason? Ukraine can change its constitution and its Euro-Atlantic rights. The American administration can in one OSIB order from the administration of President Putin. Anything. With the receipt of the guarantor state, they will block the expansion of NATO. And it can hang out on Tilka Ukraine, and who, in fact, can throw out the United States for Putin's toadstool. Another Beer-Atlantic Union, I will not expand beyond the Rakunak of the Kalishny Radian republics and catch their breath. Allegedly, can I be expendable for Putin's Russian political regime anyway? I don't think they didn't give her a simple reason. You are unlikely to be asked questions about what is fine for understanding a legally non-binding document. Such an agreement will not pass through Congress. She just doesn't know how to get no sprats in his voice. So Vlad and President Donald Trump. Kfir is absolutely calm because she is persuaded with reasons. I'm going to be a democratic president, but I'm just going to run Trumpism. I'm foreign policy, I'm internal. We are with you, of course. Another democratic president will be waiting in his program on the ruin of Trumpism and Trumpists. And I think that the prices need to be explained. And the Putins are perfectly, of course. Then you have a guarantee that NATO will not expand, and will also take on the events with the received states, and successfully reach 2029 year. To this, the Republican president, and I will also be like an ultra-right activist for Donald Trump. Maybe not a calm Trumpian politician. It is necessary, and we will discuss with you the situation tied up from the yak by the fault of the American administration. So Ukraine will propane with Brita, and Euro-Atlantic aspiration, and the mind has praise and solutions. Even before legally binding guarantees. About the treaty, and I just ratified the Congress. And I'll tell you buckets here that Ukraine, in principle, theoretically has richly ratified guarantees for its own in Congress. And Russia has a favor in Congress, tied up firm not expanding the pub of the Atlantic Alliance. That's logical to torture. Congress in May, praise please, Yaka did not give guarantees in Ukraine, and you can be jealous of the 5th article. That's the guarantee. Yaki is not enough on the was, even with the states received, they will hand over the Russian-Ukrainian guilt. In the Rada of Russia's repeated attack on Ukraine. I like the logic of this approach. With all due respect, it would still be like this. Absolutely overstated, not Zazumila. I would say this is not a long time for me. All 4 administrations, Yaki failures in the hour of the cob of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict in the 2014 lesson. And the administration of President Barack Obama, both, and Persia the administration of President Donald Trump, and the administration of President Joe Biden, and a friend of the administration of Donald Trump, leaves her a simple axiom, that the main task of the presidential administration with the staff received is not allowed to have a direct conflict with the Russian Federation. I am up to nuclear guilt, and for hanging out with a strategic nuclear dump, and bent tens in a million Americans. The culmination of the conflict. Respect to more greatest nuclear attempts with participation. It cannot enter into conflict with each other. For the frequent people from our planet. The goal for American politics, I repeat, is not a theorem. And the fact of receipt states to cook so to help Ukraine in the world to flow in different ways. In different ways, for administrations remained in the city. And not so that they would lose heart from a direct conflict with the Russian Federation. I want Tilky, for which, as a result, I will re-attack Russia on Ukraine in those concepts. The Russian Federation will cease at the moment to be a nuclear power, and a nuclear sprat, once and for all. A nuclear power will no longer be such a hand-over-hand nuclear dump, and the proteases of the United States, whose strike was inflicted on their European allies. Yaks will snake about the Americans' approach. And what do we say? Here they are in truth, the Russians have not passed anything, and are just bluffing, and just doing groy. In order for you to chat, and an hour in order to create a comfortable platform for yourself, to eliminate the Ukrainian state. And not at such a time, what to shove and force with another and Russia's attack on Ukraine, and not overgrowth. Can load the Russian Federation with force so that it drinks its guilt. Then there is no logic in the topic, and I honestly do not believe in guarantees from getting the states to give Ukraine. I in the audience do not believe in the happy light of guarantees about the conflict with a nuclear power. And I think it's just accepted as a fact that no one knows what the famous article against the contract is. For breaking up with our subsidies from Poland and the Baltic Ukrainians. It is absolutely not the time that the Russian Federation will attack Ukraine with the receipt of the state will protect them. Guarantees are in principle small in the harness of Ukraine. The gates are not on the territory of our Ukraine with a strong missile army. The drone army is strong, but in unshackled forces. The narthex of Ukraine on the fort, because at the time of a new attack of the Russian Federation, the aggressor will not be able to deliver such a blow. These are the long black days of Russian history. The Russians are also exactly the mind, like the Blitz is not an alleged walk. But Tilky death is another 155,000 times the death of Russian occupiers on Ukrainian land, as well as strikes by Dobin missiles directly at the temples and energy facilities of the Russian Federation, from the economy to the weapons of Ukraine into the waters of the attack. And in order to turn Russia into a black desert, we have our own forces. And the Russians inform us that we still have to get them not to correct the historical tragedy. And for what else is needed in the peace plan, it was clear that we have an overestimated strong army, and are frequent on Ukrainian propositions. Think I'm still in Trump's plan to declare the Ukrainian army to 600,000. And I will also cut down the cabin for defense, so that at the moment of another blow from Russia, we will deal a serious blow to all strategic objects. With this rank, I put the crab on and off again. In those situations, yeah, we are, of course. We won't be able to do it yet. I won't be on the spot for another blow. And then you can exhale tortured. And what with receiving states may be afraid of a nuclear attack from the side of Russia as a nuclear power. And Ukraine, not being a nuclear power, may not be afraid. Well, I was responsible for Russian-Ukrainian nuclear dumping, and still was not. On the back of a simple reason, it is political here in the nuclear dumping of a nuclear power. To set a nuclear security precedent for Tilky for the Russian Federation, but for all nuclear powers, including the People's Republic of China. Looking like this in a political configuration, Joseph Biden himself managed to get the head of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. Obvious not male stand nuclears broy this looks. And the Russians have perfectly notified that from Ukraine to a nuclear power, it is not a clear precedent to change everything in a nuclear dump. And in Vienna, the nuclear powers look completely different. Because here and there again, and no one is saying it's the American idea that nuclear powers may be secomono nuclear dropping all. I honestly, in short, think that I am still the Russian Federation, with which the United States will fight among themselves. Yeah, for me. I'm on the exchange. Out, and they will fight without a nuclear dump. Since a nuclear power is at war. I'm India, Pakistan, let's say we're at war with each other. I'm going to shove, of course, the cores on the dump, in principle. On the mayor's guarantee. She can be Tilky and guarantee that the blame for NATO is yes. Another nuclear power still can't survive. You are a nuclear dump on nuclear, and that's it. And the nuclear discharge itself is no one's fault. Nicola on the ritual. On the ritual of India, Pakistan, on the ritual of Israel. I'm officially a nuclear dump of all the respect she's going there and Israel on Tilky terrorists with the Hamas organization. Type of the Iranian Islamic Republic is not yet a nuclear dump and was not afraid to throw its missiles directly into Israeli places. And tried to fire at a nuclear reactor in a demon, and maybe a geril of the nuclear program, from a Jewish state. Then who again and nuclear with a nuclear dump is not so that they are still on the clear, fully ensuring you and even more so. And the greatest nuclear flow and with participation. Yakmas, Mexico, and Canada. This is not an easy share. Here. Well, I think I'm not going to hold Canada here and jumped to the fact that Canada is a nuclear ally on the pot. But Mexico, let's say, is not her, not in such a politically sensitive way. To that, I think we would have a shvid here that could be applied from Mexico and lower from Canada. Pressed. Here? So, in principle, it is not such moments that I will propane Ukraine as well. But it is well known, of course, that those points are still not accepted for Russia. And the Russians are unlikely to accept these points of the Trump plan. I'm talking about what's in American supplies, and there's still a lot of who else on the truth of the Sith. Was numb in the fact that the Ukrainian troops were completing, and I don't understand the convolutions. And it's looking like this and saying it's just manic. And so otherwise, we will continue the process itself. And we don't pass, I may be wrong, but you don't pass. Putin says the opposite in your Chabad to President Erdogan. Erdogan, and you know from the mouth that we are close and will marry Putin in size. Here, and the Minister of Off-the-Wall Inquiries Hakan Fidan, well, I am one of our relatives, first at Erdogan. Saying that I will be able to manage the mayor so far. Then the DVD will be able to praise such decisions as the people of Ukraine will be able to praise in a referendum. To the fact that the greedy political leader will not surrender, I will put this decision. And I'm trying again that we will, I'm still acting with the fact that I demand a referendum on territorial integrity. And it's important for Ukrainians to send prots that they were given to Russia on the territory. He gave our territory to you. Well, Sasha, I choose to eat shitty food. We are here with you analyzing constitutional law, articles in the Constitution. So not me, I had in Ukraine Prido to choose from the ballot in the Crimea. In Sevastopol, Donetsk and Lugansk, Kherson, because of the Paris regions, it is absolutely certain to hang like this. They spent their bridesmaids on wine. All volunteers. Yak is rich in people with dates to say, and so the primus of Donald Trump and Putin at once. There will also be politicians, and there will be important Ukrainians. I have Putin on the topic of the whole situation. The referendum plan cannot be military. That's fine, of course. Well, then there is a kind of torture. We don't give up yet, we are fine with you of course, I would also say fighting in those situations about. There they are tied to Tilky from Bith. Out and tied up with the Russian penny. The reference battle for Russian assets begins literally in a year. And I think we need to thrash the diplomatic blasts to win this beard. There is still, in principle, the European Union before allocated to us are important around. About Russian assets. Lead. TP. In order to get a reparative loan, we need a qualified member of the European Union to vote at the summit of the European Union. This is not a secret vote, but a qualified one. We need a small 11 Ukrainians to oppose such a decision. In the Ukraine, live not less than 60, not less than 30 acres in Naslany of the European Union. What will be the prots? At the same time, we know more about Belgium, China, Bulgaria, Malta, Czech Republic, cleaning, Slovakia, and name carelessly Italy. I think that the situation with Italy here is tied to the fact that Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, is an anti-right political party of Italy's brother, and she is a political ally of Donald Trump. And the same thing through her, Donald Trump, and speaking about the allocation of reporting in Ukraine, respecting the plan. And a friend can spend, you can earn on the frequency of your loans. And yet, they are not yet qualified positions to get. It does not matter that Ukraine has traveled to Ukraine. Just let's say France will not act decisively, speaking for the fact that we have on dates France Nicola's situation has not publicly spoken in the PRIT. Spain, of course, we are talking about the fact that she gave the shop of battles. But the largest Ukraine, Poland, will be extremely for the largest Ukraine of the European Union, and will be for. So it is important that 3 or 4 more Ukrainians of Ukraine do not start there yet, and the Baltic position. I think you're fine, of course. And we'll check it diplomatically tied to the fact that we are at a time podsturigat. And I think that the oyster in Berlin wires. Vladimir Zelensky's tied with European leaders against a penny. And this is already needed in order to get into our budget. Well, that's how the analysis goes, and from oyster and Ukrainian propositions. Even from the oyster, I will ask you those who have not subscribed to the channel. We have completed more than 3,000 to the Millionaires channel, and so the brood en masse, so there will be a caress. Take a ride, sign those who are not signed, and I will also be happy for you. Let's put millions with Rob Channel AI. What do you think about the Ukrainian propositions? The Americans may really get numb more than once. Well, with the tools of the channel, I am responsible for the tests, the yaks will arrive. And the weather is favorable to Putin for the elections. No, I won't. I respect in the audience that Putin is not profitable on the way. You raise the blame, you don't give one blow yourself with such a rank. Girlfriend, overgrown Putin can still speak illegitimately in Ukraine, Vlad. I think there will be a presidential parliamentary choice to slow down the argument for an hour. And you, of course, are still willing to make every effort, and Russia will demonstrate. Now the choice of the company, I think they will work. It is unlikely that a pro-Russian politician can win the presidential elections of Ukraine at once. Through the cadence, you can still, well on you, the president of Ukraine can speak, and from those very positions he spoke for him. Even before the completion of the guilt. Putin also dismissed the blame of the Ukrainian administration. Again, he also talks about the yak coup d'etat, so I'm not Bach. Putin was numb in the elections for the Rada. To talk about the legitimacy of Ukraine's Vlada, so about a real choice either. I have yet to demonstrate Ukraine's successes on the battlefield, sailed on Trump with empathy to Putin, with empathy Trump to Putin. With empathy to Yakov Kakatsia, with empathy to a political style. Trump likes authoritarianism as the authoritarian leader of America. He simply does not get to the fact that the prices are that Ukraine And it is possible to have a residual democracy. Rich. And here is the torture of sympathy, and here is the torture of rationality, since, of course, Trump. Even a little bit, my Ukraine will enter Mexico and Canada, Trump's rumor, Ukraine and Belarus Putin's rumor. This is absolutely logical. I'm in Ukraine, can still stand up for a little one, she can fight with a smaller Ukraine and that's it. Also in it, Trump is going to put Putin's entry zone there. And there and entering into a support, he will be punished by a dialogue with Lukashenko and Tilke. So I do not know on discounts on Trump to float our successes on the battlefield. Chastin is still leading Ukraine Maya Bilsh by 6 to the mayor, and I will also tell you in this form I am not in. And what Trump has something for Putin. But we know, we say the plans, so Putin does not have them a priori, but it is not necessary. Then to a friend energetic on her look respectful of our blackouts and attacks on firm Russia. But I respect them, and energy can be in the interests of both Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine still has the energy of nuclear power plants, and at once. They do not allow us to waste energy to everyone from the Pacham of the crowded territory of Ukraine. Russia extremely does not want a post with its own on a carpooling. The only thing that Russia can do is that now it is left over to drag Ukraine into darkness. Are Ukraine on the territory not suitable for living, such a rank to clear the Maybit? On the territory from Putin's point of view in Russia, it is visible important meshes. And we can respect that we are Russian on the profit, and Putin called Putin pennies. So they could start with a bite for Ukraine. The Haiba elections are a referendum on fire, and they have destroyed international law. No ideas, and I will become a military man. And there they will remain right behind the defense of the Ukrainian constitution. The referendum can't be held for sure, and now the temples are excluded from the defense in the constitution. Even before the elections, it is possible to replace the obvious law of treason in the constitution. And about the elections to military Astana. And why is it necessary to ensure elections? To that, the President of Ukraine curtailed the President with the topic received in the state, with the topic of the President, with the partisan received in the state. Well, very well, of course, he can't earn anything. You respect us about the loops, Chebok bases of chance, with a logical denouement. I'm giving a chance with a logical denouement. Everyone has become aware of the mayor's plans in Ukraine. It was clear, and all this is easier, we will discuss it with you, I will come to us with a notification. An absolutely insane plan in this situation cannot be welded with the received states and saving into an economical claim against the Russian Federation. But today we are aware that we have strikes against the Russian shadow fleet with the truth, because it happens with the absolute. And with the states received, firm receiving the state for, this they give us coordinates for such strikes. And why? But because Trump, and all his love to Putin, like an authoritarian ruler, have cooled down the duel. Expel Russia from the energy market, so that there is more space for agricultural products in the state. And in principle, you're on Russia early chippas can't say about the problems of the Russian economy. Putin is also thinking about the completion of guilt. Yeah, we can also overwhelm civil ships near the Black Sea. What is united with our Black Sea and the Union, and will really be able to Protea, is the aggression of the Russian Federation. But we do not give up yet, and so richly, who helps us will get tired of this aggressive Namaganim of Russia. And no one from Ukraine will be in the unions and can lead the Russian Federation to a direct one. The headquarters, of course, again, and illusions that up to what Nicola will not be. So what kind of information field is warming up on the topic of we, otherwise the axis supposedly explained so? Do you happen to be in the RIC? No, you don't. In RIC, and you and I, of course, are still overgrown. The whole topic is specially overheating due to the fact that Trump was also numb in it. A friend to the fact that in order to destabilize the Ukrainian interest of the Russians, it is necessary that the dishes and veins are in the illusion that the axis is the axis. And the absolutely obvious logic is that we are cutting it. So in the dark, you and I are, well, really in a cola situation. So otherwise, we are still balk in an honest chast on people. So Maria is about Shvidki and the world, about the illusion of such a Shvidkov to the mayor. And we can persuade the mind about what it looks like. I will be extremely disappointed. Extremely Russians need everything possible for him. So that all the disappointment was tied to the Ukrainian Vlad. That is, you could, but we did not conclude. I repeat once again, we all have plans on Putin's side for knitting with two head styles. Persha Thiel. A painful hour. Both President Donald Trump and I have the appearance of new manual sanctions, serious sanctions against the Russian economy. I can say that the Russians do not fix it much. What? To what you know, the plan of sanctions plans against Rosneft and Lukoil for the rights. And this is a serious blow to the Russian energy sector. And not just Putin's visit to render fashion, not with the simple obvious fact that sprats of enterprises in India, in China, at the same time are being stolen into Russian nafto. And those who are rich and not this, but a friend are not important. Internal destabilization in Ukraine. Of course, Putin is on a special operation. And Zagoli still lead the destabilization of me on the richly important Chino niche of the temple of my litter. No one at once is engaged in pedigreeing anti-Putin settings in Russia itself. Not us, not Zahir. And the downpour of protest sentiment in Russia is a sociological test. And the fact that the destabilization of the suspensive mood I do not happen. And the Russian jealous informative floors in Russia in their own hands, and cleaning it all the strongest. So in theory, it has already been a little over an hour before Russia pretends to be a digital constable. Already people are beginning to be fined for the wrong joke of the West on the internet. This is literally rise up and the days. This is an absolutely incredible precedent. Pershi Virek was awarded a fine for posting extremist materials in that she did not wash anything. It wasn't me who didn't like it. It's not like I didn't send pennies to anyone, but just in Google, what we can do in Yandex doesn't, no, and he's joking there. Shuka and information about the basics of RUD. Identify. Just a joke in the information. It is not possible to shukadi with such information. Well, with this, it's not just the opposite, it will be in the hall soon. I'll notify you about thinking. Thank you for being on the air today. We will continue our Razmev about the share of the dimensional plan. Of those who have not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, I ask you. Because we have completed Trishka Bilsh 3000 Doconal millions, and I will be glad that you are 3000. Put in a Podobeka, put likes, topic, ether. Well, these tools of the channel, and not in the subject, watch Ukrainian soldiers, Satovi our sovereignty. Dyakuyu.